Today, before we wrap up our session on the HMI and setting it up, sometimes you want to save your routines that are in the HMI through backing up your software and also your what they call the SRAM area. And basically all the tags that you program in and your passwords, the values for the display need to be backed up so that if you ever lose that information, it's easy enough for you to bring that information back up. And you remember in an earlier video we talked about a flash card. We have a USB flash card, and so the actual software is stored on that USB flash card. So we want to go through how to get into that mode. Okay, there's a couple of ways to do it. Right now you can go to miscellaneous and you can hit exit application, and that will trigger a routine in the background of the display where it will actually go over into the application or the maintenance mode for the screen. Another method, go to any of the screens, press this side of the screen, okay, you hear the beep, then you can press this side over here, okay, and you have a nice little keypad that'll show up here, and you can change you can turn the backlight on and off, you can change the contrast of the display, as well as go into this maintenance mode. So let's do this again. All right, now pressing this button which says mode, okay, now don't be too concerned if it takes 2 to 3 minutes for it to transition over into this other state, because sometimes there's a lot of activity going on inside the display, and you got to understand this isn't a desktop computer that's running a Pentium processor. It's actually got a smaller operating system, so it takes more time for it to process data and get itself into a state that it feels like it can transition over into this mode. Now we're back in the what I call the maintenance menu, and we're not running the application code. The application code is basically the screens that we've set up to communicate with the PLC to tune and set up your machine, as well as review data. Now we're into the maintenance area, and there's a number of things that are here that are kind of nice to know. For example, if you're set up for Ethernet, all the Ethernet addressing is shown here. That's one of the big things that you can get into. You can also see if it has Modbus slave capability built into it, your code. That can be shown here. We also show the Ethernet, and we're talking about that this is a TurboLogix Ethernet-based Allen Bradley system, so we know what PLC it was programmed to work with. So that's some brief information that you've got here. Okay, and also the size of the file. But anyway, we want to get into some things, some of the maintenance mode items. For example, let's just press the main menu button here. Now there's a button called Run. When you hit Run, it will exit this application and actually bring up the main application for the compressor. So after we're finished doing different things inside the processor here, as far as setup or saving information or backing up files or whatever we're doing, we can hit Run and we can go back into our main application menu. A lot of things here, for example, there's an adjustment for the brightness on the HMI. There's 2 or 3 areas to do that. This is one area that can be done. The other one was on that small menu that came up on the side that we showed you earlier. Okay, and then we go back to our main menu here. We can change the Ethernet addressing. So if you need to change your Ethernet address, you just go into this screen here and you hit the edit button, and there's navigation keys that show up that allow you to step between all these different inputs. Okay, and once you're finished doing your programming, you just hit enter and it leaves. Okay, now this little tab right here is kind of critical because it also shows you that this HMI is communicating with your PLC and that your Ethernet is tied in and that it is talking. Okay, now one thing you need to understand about Ethernet, not a lot of people are completely in tune with what all Ethernet does and what its capabilities are. Ethernet is really nice because everybody has got its own unique addressing. If you have 2 devices on a network that have the same address, there will be a conflict and basically that device will shut down. Both those devices would be shut down in that situation. So let me bear in mind, you've got a unique IP address for this HMI, and there's also a unique IP address for the PLC. This one ends in 72. It's a 223.10.24.72. Our PLC ends at a 62. So that way you know that the systems are talking together, okay? If you get this connect input down here. So you know that 223.10.24.72, this HMI here with this IP address is talking to 62, which is your PLC down at the base down there. We want to return, go back to our main menu. One of the other things you need to understand is the SRAM clock area. Okay, this clock is coordinated with the PLC, so there is really no reason for you to change the clock here. If you change the clock here, it will revert back to whatever your PLC clock is set at. So you may see a situation where somebody goes in and makes a change here, and as soon as they exit, it goes back to another time and date, and they may say, hey, there's a problem with the display. Well, there's not a problem with the display. What has to happen is you have to go and set up the PLC time and date through our miscellaneous screen in the main setup. So anyway, that's the situation there that I wanted to point out so that you won't get confused and have other situations where people are saying that there's a problem with your control. Okay, there's an area called SRAM down here, and this is the format button for that, and then once you hit format and you hit execute, it'll go back and format or it will format the SRAM. I do not recommend doing that unless you absolutely have a situation where your display has given you an error down there about some of the screen information not setting correctly, or maybe the program's too big or something along those lines. What this does, this basically wipes the memory clean, and that means all of your basically password and all of your program tags that you've put into the display are now wiped out. So be really cautious about using that feature. You don't really need to do that if you don't need to. Really, the area that is of most use to most individuals is this one area here, the storage transfer area. Okay, what this allows me to do is transfer my application code, which is the unique code for the machine or for the TurboLogix EV, into my memory stick, or basically my USB flash card that's in the back of the machine. So for example, I can hit screen data here, okay, or SRAM. Now I like backing up the SRAM because it's quick and the information that's there is kind of critical at times. So first thing you want to do is hit your SRAM button. You want to look for the one that says display and an arrow pointing towards storage. We want to press that button. Okay, you'll go through and you'll have an access here, and then down here you hit start and it says work normally finished. Okay, once that shows up, you hit OK, return. Everything's programmed from your SRAM. That's backed up now. So if you want to bring that information from the display storage area back into the main display, you just go in here. Okay, it'll say select folder, and typically you don't even have to do that. You just hit start and it'll say work normally finished, and everything that's in there that's in the memory that's related to the SRAM will now be transported back into the main display. You might ask, what is the reason for doing all the backup more than one time? Well, things change. You may have added new labels, you may have changed passwords, a lot of things have changed. Or you may want to keep the original in there so that if something has gotten changed, you've got a root set of code that you bring back into the display that you start out with. For example, passwords may have gotten modified, or for whatever reason some individual modified the password. He's not in the plant, you can't get into your display. You can go in here, transfer your SRAM information back in. Your old passwords now will show up. So everything that came from the factory will show up in that fashion. So anyway, that's some information I want to pass on for you as far as reading and writing your information back and forth. So we want to return, and let's do our screen data. Okay, now we want to go display to storage. All right, now this thing will grind along for a few moments, and in this situation, nothing has ever been programmed in. You have no system program version information, font data, nothing shows up there. So let's hit the start button. Okay, you'll notice it says transferring. Now remember, we're transferring data to the storage module in this example. Okay, when the work normally finished comes up, press that button. You'll notice a little access information is flashing here, showing you that you've got access into that code. And all of a sudden now all the information that was transferred to the display, it'll give you basically information here saying what system program came up. Now you can hit return. That's all you have to do. Now, if you want to bring that information from the display or from the storage back to the display, go to that button right there. I usually hit select data, and I usually hit select all. And then after I hit select all, okay, I got a transferring information there, starts flashing. So what that has done, everything that I've transferred down, I'm transferring back into the main display. So it gives me comfort knowing that if I've got a set of code that came from the factory, I know that what I'm bringing back in is that set of code that I've stored in the past. So that'll take a few moments for that to happen. Once that does, it'll go back through and give you some information about what is in the flash module. And now after we've transferred that information, we've come in, our access tab is shown up again. We're going to hit return and go back to the main menu. Okay, the display with the arrows going between the display and the storage, never hardly ever use that. And I really am not even sure exactly what all that's going to do for you, because we're more interested in transferring our information over and not reading and writing back and forth between the two modules. So anyway, we want to do a return real quick. Okay, hit our main menu. Okay, there's an IO test menu here. And the nice thing about what this does for you, you can go in and do this one thing, and that's your switch check, I believe they call it. And what that does, that brings up this grid of your display. So if you think you've got a bad pixel or a bad area of your display, you can actually come in and test it here. So you can go in, write code, you know, draw pictures all over this thing, and ensure that your pixels in the background are good, and also to know if your touch screen is doing what it's supposed to do. So that allows you to go in and do kind of a quick mechanical check on that. You can hit the old erase button, and you can do a return, another return, hit your main menu, hit the run. Okay, as soon as you hit run, the machine comes back up to the main application menu. And that's that. Thank you.